Hi there, this is Jenny Walker from DigiGoods and Printables ELA. Welcome to Argumentative Essay Writing, Segment 5, Developing a Hook. If you found this video from YouTube, you can find a link to this workshop in the description. A hook is the first thing in your paper that your audience will read. This is the first sentences or two that are designed to grab your reader's attention or hook them. You've heard the expression that you can only make a first impression once. This is especially true in writing. So how can you increase the chances that people will want to read your work? Hook them right from the start. People are very busy and have a lot of choices of things to read. They will not take time to read something that doesn't interest them immediately. Fortunately, people are pretty predictable, and there are a few tricks that will usually pique their interest. The most important things to remember about hooking your reader are that you need to make them curious, and the hook must be tightly related to your thesis statement. In this segment, you will learn the 6 hook methods. There are others, but these are the most effective that I think. And how to create a hook from the big idea of your thesis statement. Scroll down to the next slide and watch this very helpful video on creating hooks. Go ahead and pause this video, take a minute to watch. Okay, now that you've watched the video and can see the importance of hooks, let's talk about 6 methods that I think are the most effective and why they are effective. First is the anecdote. This is a brief personal story. Notice I said brief. It's very short. Why is this such an effective method to tell a short story right from the beginning? Because people are more interested in things told from a real human's perspective. Enlightenment. This is a statement that clears up a misconception. In other words, you enlighten people and help them realize something that they didn't know before. Why is this method so effective? Because people find it fascinating to discover that most people have been wrong about something. It's kind of an aha factor. Here's another method. Thought-provoking question. This is a question that makes the reader curious. This is effective because thought-provoking questions cause people to see something from a new perspective in a way they had not imagined. A rhetorical question. This is a question that's meant to make someone think, not necessarily to be answered. This method causes people to think in the way you want them to think. It kind of leads them to your point by asking a question, but you're not really looking for their answer. You can use this method to cause people to see your point by leading their thoughts in the direction you want. Another very effective hook method is a shocking statistic, a startling fact represented by numbers. Statistics can show the seriousness, urgency, or complexity of a situation. Accurate statistics also bring validity to your claim. And this is my favorite, the tidbit. It's an interesting or little-known fact. Everybody loves a nice little piece of information that is interesting or unusual. In fact, there used to be a whole section dedicated in the weekly newspaper to tidbits. It was called Tidbits. And in this section, you could just read a bunch of little interesting facts that people had no idea about. Okay, so now that you know effective methods, let's look at some examples of each of those. First, the anecdote. Remember, this is the brief personal story that people really relate to. Because we're all humans, we like to hear human stories. Here's an example. Growing up in a poor family, I was often embarrassed by my worn and tattered clothing. I remember being jealous of my cousin who avoided this humiliation because her school required students to wear school uniforms. So you can see in this example, This is obviously an essay that's written about school uniforms, and it's obviously in favor of school uniforms. And it tells a brief little story about why this person, um, why it was so important, why school uniforms would have been so important to this person. And people can relate to this because it's human and it draws on our emotions. Okay, here is an example of enlightenment. Most people think that teenagers are grumpy and that they don't care about much. The truth is, most teenagers are very kind and are interested in what's happening in their world. See, this is enlightening. A lot of people do have a preconceived notion about teenagers, but to make them think differently, that maybe what they thought is not true, that's enlightening and it's very interesting. Here's a thought-provoking question. If you were born deaf, in what language would you think? That is not just a typical boring question. That is thought-provoking. That's deep. Here's a rhetorical question. Should we just let children ruin their brains by watching unlimited violence on TV? You see, this question is not really meant for you to give an answer because the obvious answer is no. It's meant to drive home a point. Obviously, the point is that video games ruin children's brains. Now, of course, that's debatable, but you see where I'm going. Okay, shocking statistic. This is a fact represented in some form of a number. Here's an example. Nearly 1 in 5 school-aged children suffer from childhood obesity. Or you could also say 1/5 of all school-aged children in the United States are considered to be obese. This is effective because it really drives home the importance of the situation, of this topic. This is a lot. 1 in 5 school-aged children. Now, this is made up, so I don't know that that's true. But if that were true, that is shocking. Wouldn't you agree? And here is an example of a tidbit. Did you know that if you have no debt and $10 in your pocket, then you have more wealth than 25% of the population? See, that's interesting. I've never thought about it like that, but that's true. That means there's probably a lot of people in poverty, and this really makes you think. But also notice this. Sometimes these methods overlap. This could be considered a shocking statistic, and it could also be considered a thought-provoking question. So this is kind of several methods combined, which is very interesting also. Now that we've talked about good hook methods that are effective, let's talk about bad hook methods. Bad hooks do the opposite of making people want to read your writing. Instead, they turn your reader away. Here are a few bad hook methods that you want to avoid at all cost. Okay, first, using cliches. A cliche is a phrase that has just become so commonly overused that it's just a cliche. It may have been cool at some point, but it's not cool anymore because people have said it too many times. I'm sure you can think of some cliches right now. Here are a couple examples of bad cliches that you would not want to start your paper out with. Actions speak louder than words, or sometimes you have to put your nose to the grindstone. These are true. They're not wrong, but they're just boring because they've been overused. All right, here's a really bad hook method that you absolutely want to avoid. Announcing the writing task or the essay. This is where you tell your audience what you're going to do instead of just doing it. Here's how it sounds. In this essay, we will discuss how cats communicate with birds. See, they're telling the reader what they're going to do. Or the purpose of this writing is to blah, blah, blah. No, just don't tell your reader what you're writing about. Just write it. In other words, show, don't tell. Okay, here's another terrible hook method that I've seen students do. I'm not sure where they learned this, maybe in previous classes, but I have to deprogram their minds to get them to stop doing it. Opening with a definition, especially a definition that people already know the meaning of. It's boring. Here's an example. Webster's dictionary defines depression as feelings of severe despondency and dejection. Blah. Don't do it. Okay. And hooks that ask the reader what they think about your topic. This is maybe the worst. And students do it all the time because it's easy and it kind of fills in the space. Here's an example. What do you think about the study of how drugs affect the brain? This is just filler. It adds nothing to your writing. Besides, your objective is to convince the reader of your claim, not to find out what they think. We're trying to steer the reader into thinking in a new way that matches our thoughts, not asking them what they think. Okay, so just don't do it. And besides, you could plug in any topic and it would be the exact same question. What do you think about this? What do you think about school uniforms? What do you think about cell phones in the classroom? See, it's just not a good method. So let's not do that. Okay, so now that you know about good and bad hook methods, let's talk specifically how to create one. You do not have to pull a thesis statement, a hook out of thin air. You can use information in your thesis statement along with a little bit of imagination to create an amazing hook that will make your reader want to devour your writing. Step 1. Find a big idea from either of your reasons. Remember those reasons that you created in the earlier video? The reasons why your claim is true. You're going to think about those reasons and come up with your big idea. There are many directions you can go. So you're going to find the reason that speaks to your heart and the one that you think is the strongest, that you could be the most passionate about. You can pause this video and go have a look at your reasons if you forgot what they are. Step 2, you're going to turn your big idea into a hook using one of the methods that we talked about. It can be one of the 6 methods, or maybe you have another method that you learned somewhere else, maybe one of the methods from the video that I didn't discuss. You're going to choose the method that makes the most sense for your big idea. They do not all work equally for every topic, so you're going to have to use a little bit of your imagination here. Let's take a closer look at specifically how this is done. Here's a breakdown of 3 different hooks using 3 different methods, but all using the same big idea from this thesis statement right here. I'm on slide 50 in case you're lost. Your slide might be somewhere around there. Just make sure you're here with me. Okay. Here's the thesis statement. School lunch should be free for all students because well-fed children learn more effectively and are more engaged in activities and studies. Okay, notice there are 2 reasons. Well-fed children learn more effectively and are engaged in activities and studies. We're going to go with this one. We're going to go with this reason. Well-fed children learn more effectively. What's the big idea here of this reason? The big idea is learning or nutrition, more specifically hunger. So more like learning and hunger are the big ideas of this reason right here. So here is the first method. And we're going to use a thought-provoking question with the big idea of hunger. Did you know that hunger is one of the most debilitating hindrances to education? Here's example number 2, using an anecdote. Remember, this is a brief personal story. It can be about you or about somebody else or about people in general. When many children leave school, they are concerned with sports, friends, or chores. but some have to worry about food. 13-year-old Adrian wonders each day where his next meal will come from. So again, the big idea is hunger, and we're using the method anecdote. And hook 3, we're going to use a shocking statistic that relates to hunger. Nearly 50 million children nationwide are trying to learn on an empty stomach. So you see what we've done here is just pick a method, take the big idea, and try to say something interesting about it. Now that you have a deeper understanding of hooks and why they're important, let's give it a try. Scroll down to the next slide, and I want you to choose 2 of your reasons. You're not going to use both of them, but it's nice to have a couple to look at. You can scroll back up and look at your reasons if you have forgotten what they are. And just go ahead and type them in these 2 boxes. Now in these boxes, think of a few big ideas that you could draw from this reason. You could do both reasons if you want, if you would just like to see it all laid out, or you could just pick one of these reasons and add your big ideas. Go ahead and pause this video and take a minute to do this part of the activity. Okay, now that you have listed your reasons and you've thought of the big ideas that are in your reasons, what hook methods do you think will be the most effective? You can write that here. So now that you know your reason, you know the big ideas, you know what hook method you're going to use, what is the most interesting way you can say this? Think of a very interesting hook grabbing attention or attention grabbing hook, and type it in this box right here, and you will have a great start to the beginning of your essay that will make everybody want to read your essay further. Well, that wraps up this segment of argumentative essay writing. I'll see you in the next video where we will discuss creating background information in your introductory paragraph. Again, if you have found this video on my YouTube channel, you can find a link to the workshop in the descriptions. Teachers, make sure to connect with me on Facebook where we'll discuss all things digital learning. That link can be found in the description as well. Happy teaching and happy learning.